Welcome to the Woodridge Audio Project. I'm David, or Dave if you prefer, from audioprojectcentral.com, and I'm hosting the Woodridge Audio Project. This episode of the Woodridge Audio Project is part of the uplifting, informative, and, I'm sure you will agree, inspirational series of character profiles of different people at the school. Please share the episodes with your friends and your family via your social media or in whatever ways you can think of, even if that means emailing a link to someone. You can find out more about Woodridge or contact a member of the team by visiting www.woodridge.co.za. The guest for this episode is Mr. Nicholas Kock, the College Director of Student Affairs, and he begins the interview by talking a little bit about his background.
I'm currently the Director of Student Affairs at Woodridge. I started off as a teacher years ago in Cape Town and then taught in the northern areas in PE, and then came to Woodridge in 2007 as an IT teacher. I then also served as a housemaster in boarding, and then eventually served as Director of Boarding. But in 2019, I took a little sabbatical and I spent 18 months in Vietnam and then returned last year. So I just took up the position as Director of Student Affairs, but I'm still teaching IT as well.
Did you say you were in Vietnam last year, 2020?
Yeah, so I returned July 2020.
And how did the COVID lockdown situation affect you there?
I think people in Southeast Asia has the hindsight of SARS. So they've dealt very well with this whole COVID situation, but they went also in full lockdown. So that's one of the reasons I was only supposed to return this year, actually, but COVID has caused me to return earlier. So because of the fact that now we couldn't travel anywhere, we were basically grounded in Vietnam. They closed their borders, so you couldn't go in or out. Then my wife and I decided to return. It was quite a struggle to find a repatriation flight because at that time South Africa closed borders here as well, so we couldn't just fly in on a commercial flight. So it was quite a mission to get back into the country, but eventually we made it. Spent 2 weeks in quarantine. Felt a bit guilty because it was on the taxpayer's account and we've just been a year and a half out of the country not being here, and we were treated really well in that quarantine facility.
What did it feel like getting back after the spiel of being stuck abroad?
A huge relief to be back in the country. Although there was lots of tension here, given the lockdown and COVID and so on, so you could sense the fear of people. Home will always be home. It was very good to be back.
Could you tell me a little bit about what directing student affairs looks like in practice?
As the Director of Student Affairs, I look after the wellness of students, oversee their emotional wellness, make sure they're in a good space, support students where I can, which include, referring them to psychology services. I do a bit of counseling myself to students. I also work very closely with the grade heads who's in charge of the discipline of each grade. So I sort of oversee their activities. So I have a disciplinary role in addition to my pastoral care role.
What kind of advice would you give to students or parents or colleagues in general?
In general, one of my mottos is to live with an attitude of gratitude, to count your blessings in good or bad situations. There's always something good that you can take out of something. When students make mistakes, I try and remind them to keep their chin up, because we do learn from our mistakes, and I encourage them to take responsibility for their mistakes and see the blessing of being able to learn from that or try and take something good out of that.
Have you got anything to add to that in the sense of your favorite thing about your role?
I think my favorite thing is probably interacting with students, especially when they're not in school, in the afternoons, after school, when they're not in a formal classroom setup. So I normally take my dog for a walk late afternoons, and that's just the time that students normally either just finish sport or they just go to get ready for supper, or they're on their way for supper, or they return from supper. So it gives me the opportunity then to chat to students informally, to catch up with them outside of the classroom. That is one of the things that I mostly enjoy with being able to live on campus at Woodridge, and that gives me the opportunity to interact with students. I do miss out on some of the day scholars, so obviously after hours I interact more with boarders, but I try to catch up with day scholars as well during breaks or in the afternoons while they're still on campus. But that I treasure that, and I enjoy interacting with students and just chatting with them and interacting with them informally.
And looking back at your time at Woodridge, what would you say is the highlight?
Probably a couple of highlights. I've experienced a lot of growth here, and I've been given a lot of opportunities over the years to serve in different roles. So that would be one of my highlights. Another would be, my own children were students here. And I remember vividly, I was at one prize-giving evening, and both of them on that night won 2 awards. My son got the Siege Perilous Award, which is normally voted by their peers, and it was quite a nice, good feel highlight for me. At the same evening, my daughter received the Most Promising Young Musicians Award. So that stood out for me, my own kids, their successes, but also my own growth.
COVID, the pandemic, lockdowns, did you find yourself growing? Did you find yourself learning any techniques to get through that difficult time?
It's really a growth experience and a developing one. And it's ongoing because it's not over yet. We can learn, as much as we teach kids, we can also learn a lot from them. And one of the things about children that stands out for me is their resilience. So that's certainly an aspect that I've, during this time, picked up again. Resilience to face whatever comes in your way, and just stay strong and stay positive. Try to stay positive. There's so many negative things in social media, in the actual media, print media, digital media. So sometimes just to switch off from that and just focus on your own bubble. Because if you listen to all the stories that's out there and all people's opinions and perceptions, you can get yourself quite in a serious state of darkness. So I try to every now and then just switch off, just take a break from digital and platforms and not go onto the Facebooks and the Twitters for a day or two, just to recuperate and recharge and try to focus on where we are. And I mean, we're blessed with this beautiful surroundings at Woodridge, so we can go for nice long walks. I can just sit sometimes on my stoop here and stare at the sunset for half an hour, an hour.
Yeah, that's very therapeutic. Is there anything about yourself that you would be happy to tell me that no one else at Woodridge knows about you?
I don't think there's a lot that I'm a very open person, so I talk a lot to people, so people generally know a lot about me. A lot of people, though, know that maybe I'm one of 9 children, so come from quite a big family.
Well, it seems appropriate that you've mentioned family, because the Woodridge environment seems so family focused, especially from what I've heard from all the people that I've interviewed, because they're so passionate and enthusiastic and they care and they're open with each other, at least by the sounds of things. So it's a really great staff profile that I've picked up through this interview series. So just amazing.
Pretty much a very tight-knit community, yeah.
And that brings us to the end of the interview. Thanks for listening, and please do remember to share the episodes and relevant social media posts with your friends and family, and like the episodes at whichever social media platform you found them on. If you have any follow-up questions, head over to www.woodridge.co.za, where you will find the contact details for the school, and you can contact me at www.audioprojectcentral.com.